Good afternoon. It is true, I am on holiday. I didn't get a drinks package, so being a tight Yorkshireman with deep pockets and short arms, I offered to do this. Now, I'm grateful to Don because he's helping me out because I'm just getting back into the cruise lecturing, and I need to submit 2 or 3 examples of the work that I do, just so the powers that be can assess me and then say, okay, you're good to go. So any feedback you can give, please feel free to put it through to Dom, and I'll see you in the bar. Thank you. So, quick show of hands. It seems to be a tradition. Where's everybody from? UK? US? I don't miss Canada? Australia? New Zealand? Poland? Yes? You're all here. Poland? Good. Germany? That's okay. That's great. It's nice to know. How many people saw the talk I did the other day on firearms? If you could just keep your arms up, please, and swear that you will not divulge anything that you may or may not have seen the other day to any other guest who wonders what the hell I'm on about. Okay. It will be revealed very, very shortly. My name's Keith Lumley, as has been mentioned. I rose to the dizzy heights of a chief superintendent in the UK, which is about the equivalent of a chief in the US, Canada, Australia, and so. I had lots of things on my shoulders. There weren't Mars bars, as somebody once pointed out to me. They didn't melt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through Wisecracks and Cops. It has to have a snatchy title. Calling it amusing on the app doesn't really attract people to the talk. So Wisecracks and Cops, it's all about what I believe are funny stories from my time within law enforcement. Now, I think that they were funny. You may not, but the test for you is not, well, to laugh when you think you should laugh. That's always good. But I'm put a little bit of a quiz in here. So if you think that something's true, at the end, we'll have a little show of hands. And if you think it was false, similarly. But what I can tell you, there's a serious point to the humour within policing, and it's the same whether it's in the UK, Australia, New Zealand, or anywhere else. And that is, it's a good safety release for a lot of us, that sometimes we can have a good laugh. As long as you're not caught on camera doing it, as long as it's for the right reasons, and as long as it doesn't get too dark, because humour can get very dark within policing, and it's always been a good indicator of where somebody's mental state is. So there is a serious side to this. And at the end of this, you should be able to see what kind of mental state I'm in as well. I didn't go around wearing big daffodils and whatever they are, sunflowers on my hat. Don't quite agree with all of that at the minute. We're there to police impartially, not stick multicoloured flowers in his hats and all the rest of it. But that's my view, and I'm, 10 years out of the job. We did have a little bit of fun from time to time. Passing out parades, if it ever fell on Red Nose Day, you can guarantee that the red noses will be out absolutely everywhere. Now, what I like to do, just to help people understand who I am, what I've done, what we spoke about the other day, is come back with a few questions that I was asked at the end of the last talk, and we'll do the same, but I'll go outside. You're more than welcome to come up and ask me questions, whether it be out there in the bar or anywhere else. And I'm more than happy to respond and tell you what really happened, or confirm nor deny some things that may or may not have happened in this list. Now, the first question I get, is that you? I won £20 actually on this one. I had a debate on a cruise once with a guy who said, it's not you that's doing the talks on stage. Now, I knew I was in a good position in this bet, and I won £20. Bless him. It is me. That's me, looking a bit smarter, a bit younger. You look older on stage. Everybody assumes because you're retired that you must be well into your 70s. I'm not. I retired at 48 and a half after 30 years service, and carried on working in law enforcement in a variety of other guises. I do get this question asked because I do a talk, and I'll be doing it on this cruise, about cyber. A VPL is not the same as a VPN. Okay? Gents, just if you're not sure, gents, do you know what a VPL is? It's a visible panty line. You know when your wife puts the dress on and she turns round That's what the VPL is that you're supposed to be looking for, and you never admit that you've just seen it, okay? A VPN is a virtual private network, and it stops you getting hacked. But a lady came up to me, not on this cruise, on a previous cruise, and said, how will a VPL keep me safe online? Don't post the photograph for a start, that'd be good. Are you going to see that lovely gentleman who talks about the police is one that's often asked of me as well. That was me in my serious days. Trying not to laugh at everybody stood behind the cameraman taking that picture. It took about 30 attempts to get that one sorted out, but me in my office looking very stern. Do I have a hobby? Yes, I do. I'll tell you a bit about it in a minute. Do I have a wife? That's always a bit worrying. Yes, I do. She's doing some research upstairs as we speak. In fact, I've got some photographs of actually while at work. The other day when we started, I talked about my service. I started off as a cadet back in 1980, and I worked all my way through Doncaster, Barnsley, Sheffield, Rotherham, and ended up in charge of all the toys in something called OSS, Operational Support Services. We had the dogs, we had the guns, we had the helicopters, we had all the fast cars, we had all the toys as they were referred to. And I said to people the other day, my department was referred to as Toys R Us. Okay. And I guess you can bet your bottom dollar when it came to cutting back, as we had to a few years ago, mine was the first department that they all wanted to sell the helicopter, sell the cars, sell the dogs, you name it. But it didn't quite happen that way. I have got 2 nephews in the job, 3 nephews now actually, one in Hampshire, one in South, one in West Yorkshire. It's a picture of the old helicopter before we sold it. Me as a cadet, somebody pointing a gun at you, you don't have to put your hands up. This was at Fairford during the First Gulf War when Greenpeace, on my watch, decided to float a balloon over the B-52s that were parked on the runway. You know, you can imagine what the GIs were doing, running around on the airbase, pointing their M16s up at it, because they saw it actually as a threat. It was rather a tense moment for me, I can tell you, in my service, but one that gave me quite a bit of humour. I did have an Apache helicopter land in the car park at the back of my office one day, and the local press wondered what was happening, but they still don't know. It was basically somebody popped in for a cup of tea. Dogs didn't eat the dog handler. The dog handler's safe. I wasn't in the Olympics, but I held the torch. I did actually go and see the Queen, bless her, down at Buckingham Palace. Got a free tea and buns down there one day, which was really a highlight. It was a thank you for everything that we'd done in our service, and it was an absolute pleasure to go down and meet her. And we don't set police officers on fire very often, but we do train for reality. Okay, so when you do get a petrol bomb thrown at you, from time to time it happens, you know what it's going to be like. Okay, so you don't panic, you do exactly what you're trained to do and all the rest of it. And a lot of this type of training amongst police officers is now under threat because health and safety, which is very, very important, will say, well, we shouldn't train that because somebody might get hurt. But if we don't train and be prepared, it's a catch-22. I was involved in the Tour de Yorkshire, Tour de France as well, and I'm currently involved in cyber work. But as my hobby, I work at a charity and we look after the graves of Victoria Cross recipients. A couple of people asked me about that the other day. You might be aware of the Commonwealth War Graves Commission in the UK. There's similar organisations around the world that look after military graves. If you're in a private grave, you don't get looked after by anybody other than charities such as ours, and this is one that we cleaned a couple of years ago. That was actually the grave before we started. This is Muir VC, who's buried in Frimley. Back in the UK, he served in the Korean War, and his VC was killed in action, and that's it after we've finished it. Thank you. Very, very satisfying, and it isn't a pressure washer. Okay, it costs you £13,000 to buy that machine. And as part of that cleaning of the graves, we've been visiting various places. Christchurch, we popped up to see Pug Upham, who's a double VC recipient, the only combat soldier that's earned 2 VCs and is a New Zealander. There you go. The other 2 were doctors, First World War and the Boer War. But we'll not go into that. I do talks on the VC and so forth, but it's not for this programme. If anybody's wondering what that glow is at the bottom there in the middle, that's in Belgium. It's a Commonwealth War Graves cemetery, and it's on Christmas Eve. And all the kids in the town take a tea light and they pop them onto the Canadian graves that are there. That's a ritual that happens 3-4 times a year across Europe. So if you've got anybody with descendants who sadly were killed in the Second or First World War, that's the kind of thing that happens to commemorate them. They're never alone. Oh, this is my other hobby. Yeah, bless it. Can we come, Grandad? Yeah, my son's a staunch sportsman, and he's surrounded by 4 ladies. They're gorgeous, they are, really are. But boy, they don't half eat you dry and drink you dry. So what does my wife do when I'm busy? She's called Julie. She's at this very moment somewhere on the ship. If you can't see, there she is, look. Yeah. Right there. She's my researcher. If I want to research a new subject, she sits up there and she researches the subject and then tells me what I'm saying wrong, basically. That's what she does. And she'll even do it when it's pouring it down with rain. She will not be moved, as the saying goes. Okay. Now, as I mentioned, that I do work in the digital field. Now, this might be contentious, this, because we were having a debate in the office the other day about gender alignment and specificity, that word. Yes, I can't say it. And I don't know why we were talking about it, but they asked me to determine whether we should refer to computers as male or female in gender. And I said, it's a computer. Yes, but we need to know. You keep calling it she and he and this and that and the other. So I went and did some research. This is true, this. And I found this online and I sent this through. Now, when I get back home from this cruise, I'll know whether my contract's still in place. But this is it. Hopefully.
There was a group of adults who were taking a computer science course at a community college, and after a few weeks of classes, the professor decided to have some fun one day as a little learning activity, and he divided them by sex, and he put the men on one side of the room, women on the other side of the room. He said, I want you all to do a project for the next 10 minutes, and I want you to determine what gender computers ought to be. Perfect. And so they deliberated, and so finally, here come the men. They voted unanimously that computers should be referred to in the feminine gender. And so the professor said, all right, share with me your points. They had 4 points. They said, the reason why computers should be spoken of in the feminine gender is because no one but their creator understands their internal logic.
Correct.
The second reason is because when computers communicate with each other, they speak in code language that only they and experts can understand. The third reason is because every mistake you make is stored on their hard drive for later retrieval. The fourth reason, these men said, because as soon as you commit to one, you find yourself spending half your paycheck on accessorizing it. Now,
I knew I was onto a winner with this.
Don't laugh too hard, because the women had the last word on this subject. The women voted unanimously. Computers must be in the masculine gender. Why? As they gave their report, they said, first of all, in order to get their attention, you have to turn them on. Secondly, they have a lot of data but still can't think for themselves. Thirdly, they're supposed to help you solve problems, but half the time they are the problem. And the final reason they gave was because as soon as you commit to one, you realize that if you'd waited a little longer, you could have gotten a better model. There was a group.
I had to show that. I will wait and see whether or not the Equalities and Diversity Officer's got much to say to me on the way back. But humour isn't dead. It's an important part of policing if used wisely and it's used correctly. And we do have some fun still. I miss it to some degree because we have some real stupid criminals out there. I mean, you take these here at 0500 hours, that's 5 o'clock in the morning to the Brits because we talk AM and PM. Two armed men went into Starbucks and they threatened staff with weapons and stole cash. What they didn't realise is that there were 2 armed officers sat on the drive-through buying a coffee. And it's a genuine job. It was a tweet. I think it was Northants Police. But the thing that got me when I saw this was the hash at the bottom. Hashtag cappuccino. That summed it up for me that there is still a sense of humour out there. Some people may not get that, but these boys and girls certainly did. But I have had warnings about what I say, and I will give a health warning on this. If I'm likely to offend anybody, I don't do it deliberately. If anybody takes anything the wrong way, I don't do it deliberately. And if people are upset, then we do have some special cream in British Police, and it's called Tiny Violin Cream. And it's for hurty feelings. Okay, and if those don't know what a violin is, when anybody's trying to seek sympathy in the UK, we say, "I'll get the violin out," and it's usually a little one. Okay, so that's what it means. It reflects the level of sympathy that you're going to get. Now, I did the other day something called Firearms and Forensics Dispelling the Myths, and the secret can get out very, very easily on this. So those who didn't see it the other day, I'm going to show you something, and it's a genuine test. It's a test that we use on leaders to determine how task-orientated they are. And if they're overly task-orientated, we worry about them because they miss what's happening around them and don't respond correctly to threats and all the rest of it. So this is a very simple test. It's a test of selective attention. If anybody's seen this before, which is half of you, please don't say anything. If anybody who hasn't seen what I'm going to show you, don't say anything anyway, if you think you've seen it. And I'm going to ask you a question. And all it is I want you to count how many times the people wearing white T-shirts pass the basketball to each other. Okay, are we good on that? And this time, the video won't stop in the middle like it did the other day. Okay, so. And we're all going to see the same thing, no tricks. And it's Simons and Chablis that did the test. So how many times players wearing white pass the basketball? So, for those who haven't seen it before, how many passes did you count? 14, 18, 15, 13? Yeah? Anybody get 22? Good, because that's wrong. Okay. Be honest now, those who have not seen it before, how many saw the gorilla? Who thinks I'm nuts? Well, no, yeah. So, you saw the gorilla. Those who saw the gorilla, how many did you count? One? No, not one gorilla. How many times did you pass the ball? Later on in here, there's a thing about effective communication. I must watch it. Okay. Those who saw the gorilla, how many times did you see them pass the basketball? 15 over here? Yeah? Very perceptive. Very good. It is, and the reason is that people who are very task-orientated will tell me that there was no gorilla in that, and I'm telling porcupines, lies. Those who are really sort of looking at everything that's going on will count white socks. They'll ask me, why is the two big S's in the background? I haven't got a clue. But those who get the right number and see the gorilla are taking in all the stimulus, all the information, and you're the kind of people that we look for when we are looking for leaders to deal with critical incidents. Because if something goes wrong, we can blame you because everything was there and you should have dealt with it better. Shoulda. It's a phrase that's in British policing. It's you should have done this and you should have done that. We used to call it the Monday morning shouldas because everybody who wasn't working over the weekend came in and told you what you should have done. Yeah, I don't think it's different anywhere else. I'll show you just for those who think I'm, pulling the wool over people's eyes. I wasn't. I've actually been accused of having a second film and where there isn't a gorilla in it. Oh, there he is, look, off you go. So I get this out of the way because the rest of the talks that I do are meaningless because he appears quite a few times. And if you go on the constellation, the Celebrity Constellation, there is actually a statue of a gorilla carrying a fish up next to the pool. Why, I don't know, but there is. Okay. And what the important part of it is, though, it does tell us that we all see the same things, but we may interpret the data, as is the posh term for it nowadays, differently. So it's not bad if you get a witness who says they saw something different. They may be interpreting things differently. And so all of these sorts of things have to be taken into account. Now, the gorilla is called Gerald. Okay, it's Gerald the gorilla. I've done some research for you. That's him at a very sort of young age, very cute. And he actually started his service across with some militia in Africa. And this is actually a video of him in his younger days. Here we are. There may be some gunfire. There he is. There is a serious side to that as well, because I have had commanders say to me, is that real? And it's not. It is fake. But it does actually tell us something about the audience that we've got when you get questions like that. We need to weed people out slowly when we're trying to select people to deal with the highest levels of threats and risks. And humour plays a big part in that. Now, if everybody's interested, when I finish this, about looking in your own countries about humour and cop humour, you can go on to Facebook, and there are several sites. Certainly in the UK, there's UK Cop Humour. In Australia, there's Australian Cop Humour. In America, there's American Cop Humour. And there are a couple of other sites as well. There's the Police Daily, which has the lighter side of policing. And somebody posted that the other week, which made me laugh. Assume the position of the United States citizen. It's the kind of observations that cops get. These go into the magazines. They're not offensive. It's just a way of letting off steam. But that's where you can go and have a look and find stuff. If you want to do some more in-depth research, there's a book by a former police inspector from Lancashire, Greater Manchester, actually, called Charlie Owen. And he collected folklore. Stories from the old days, the good old days of policing, the ones that you wouldn't dare mention now. You'd certainly not confirm nor deny that it ever existed. And he put them into these 4 books. I'm often asked what is a good read, a funny but also a serious read. And these are the books that I always tell people to look. And if you look at Ursa's Ass first, that's the first book. And it's a district that's code sign is Hotel Alpha. So it's called by the cops who work there Ursa's Ass, because it's where everybody gets sent when they do things wrong. I was chatting to these group of people down here. In my force, it was Thorn. If you went to Thorn, you'd done something wrong. And if you wanted to get on in service and be promoted, they always told you that that's a good place to go and learn leadership in Thorn. It also meant that you're never going to come out and you're never going to get promoted either. Now, these books are a cross between some good old British cop shows. Anybody remember the Sweeney? So it's a cross between these two guys. Has anybody never seen the Sweeney? Not since last week. Yeah, this is what I was brought up on. This is one of the reasons I was recruited into the police, because I used to see this. And some of the quotes that came out were fantastic. One of my favourites, shut it, or shat it, as he used to say. Get your trousers on, you're nicked. And whenever one of these came on, one of these series and one of these quotes came out, there was a competition on the shift to see who could get that into their statement for the next arrest. And the first one usually won.
Get your trousers on, you're nicked.
That's just to prove it. We're the Sweeney son and we haven't had our dinner.
Who are you?
We're the Sweeney son, and we haven't had any dinner. You've kept us waiting, so unless you want a kicking, you tell us where those photographs are.
We didn't put that last bit in the statement. No, I wasn't scared, but someone peed in my pants. That was in it. The hairs on my wooden leg tell me something's up. And then there was a more modern series came out about 10, 15 years ago, maybe a bit longer, called Life on Mars. You remember Life on Mars? Fantastic, brilliant. Some of the quotes in there were great, like, fire up the Quattro, Gov. Yeah? You couldn't pull a handbrake turn in a Scirocco. They had to disconnect all the diffs in the gearbox and all the rest of it to make it be able to do that. I know that, I'll tell you why in a sec. Anything you say will be taken down and ripped up. And they brought out a book, which was Gene Hunt's Guide to Policing. And there's a bit in there about customer service, and I can't read it out. And it's basically saying, tell them all to go away. Words to that effect. Now, I had a bit of an influence in this because Dean Andrews, who was there, stood next to me, was the sergeant, the DS in the show. And he came out, worked with me for a few nights. And he picked up one or two little stories and what have you that he built into the series. So if ever you watch that again and you see Dean Andrews, then it's partially my fault, I guess, some of it. But he's there presenting me with a book of customer service from Gene Hunt. Fantastic series. Really, really good. Does anybody watch this? Can I just tell you that no one ever said Jesus, Mary, Joseph, and the wee donkey? Ever. Not in policing. But I can tell you now that if I'd been in policing when this series was out, what was it, Between the Lines? Yeah. I would have been desperate to say that. Line of Duty, it was Between the Lines was the one before it, wasn't it? His best one was It's Like Sucking Diesel. Whatever. But they've obviously got an advisor on the show, picking up on some of the comments and folklore. And you will see on a lot of cop shows that there are police officers who are attached and give guidance, as I did on that one, just that one series, one episode for Dean Andrews. Whoever does Silent Witness needs sacking, though, because I keep saying pathologists don't investigate crimes. Television, we've seen Naked Gun. Love that sense of humour. Anything that's slapstick like that, the obvious stuff, fantastic. The Thin Blue Line, do you remember that? These are all still available if you've never seen it, those from outside the UK. Rowan Atkinson of Blackadder fame. What a show that was, Blackadder. I was brought up on that as well. Life on Mars, Ashes to Ashes were the 2 series. Ashes to Ashes was the second in that, and they didn't make another one because shall I give it away? They were all dead. And then this one. John Hannah and Saran Jones, 2 real good actors, did A Touch of Cloth. Now, I can't tell you what a touch of cloth means in slang in the UK, but if people come over to me later, I'll tell you what it means. Okay, but it's a parody of Touch of Frost. And if you can get it, it was on Sky. I'm not supposed to advertise, but it were on Sky. And watch it. It's observational comedy. It really, really is funny. It really does tickle my onions, as they say. That's another UK saying that. Okay. Now, in policing as well, one of the ways of understanding that you'd actually been accepted on your shift as a young cop was when you were given a nickname. It's a rite of passage. And it happens in all kinds of trades, and it's the same in policing. And those nicknames have always got a relevance. And my partner was called Bub. B-U-B. Big Ugly. And it happened one night, we went to a domestic incident, there's a big fight, Christmas Eve, everybody's enjoying themselves, big fight, he walks into the middle of this maelstrom, and everybody stopped mid-punch. And somebody said, there's a big ugly bugger just walked into the room. Unfortunately, somebody was pressing the radio, asking for assistance, and it went all over the district, and from then on he was called that. We had PC Bungalow, because he got nothing upstairs. Might not get away with it in the current climate, that one, with mental health, but that's what it meant back then. We had PC Barry. This is very relevant, this. Very relevant for what we're going to be doing tomorrow. Because it was Mohammed Arif. Barry Arif. That was his nickname. These are unbelievable. We had a PC Eternal Flame. Never went out. And it carried on. We had PC Switch. His surname was Lighton. And he actually had his son joined later on, and his nickname was Dimmer. Dimmer Switch. PC 100. What's? Now, this is HR, and I can tell you now, HR departments don't have a lot of sense of humour nowadays. But when PC 100 in Derbyshire Constabulary came along, they found PC Watts, who was joining, and gave him that collar number. And we've got 240. False? Or in America, 120, and elsewhere? I think it's 120. PC Gurkha, took no prisoners. And there you go. And it didn't stop there with Nick now. I've not been able to find any out in America, but what I have found, I've had a load of fun doing this, looking around at the different policing departments across in America. And this is the flipping police, which is a nicer phrase and way of describing the police when they come up. There's the, what we got here? We've got the bacon police. We've got the Flushing police. We've got the horny police. They're from Sweden. We've got the Beaver police. We don't know what they do, but we'll move on. We've got the Hazard police. And we've got that. I wish I'd got my glasses on. What's that one? Hooker police. And what have we got there? Licking police. And then we've got the peculiar police. And we've got the savage police. And we've got the surprise police. They're the ones that sneak up on you. Sandwich police. And my absolute favourite, taken by my fair camera in Washington, D.C., the Secret Service. I've got a marked police vehicle. That's a bit like my undercover cop hat, which I wear when I go to fancy dress. I don't have to wear, well, I do wear other things, obviously, but I don't have to dress up, I just do that. And when it comes to caps, famously, the police helmet in the UK has been used quite strategically and tactically well over the years. That's at Twickenham many years ago, when a chap decided to run across the pitch, and the sergeant there found a very good use for his helmet, just to hide the gentleman's modesty. And so forth. Oh, you should have seen what were inside the hat when they got rid of them. Now, we never work with dogs, or we try not to work with dogs, especially not if it involves television or anything like that. This is a good reason why. When they get you, they don't let go. And then this one is taken in Belgium, and this is an actual real live training exercise trying to show the benefits of the Belgian Malinois dog, which knows no fear. There he goes. Oh. Fantastic so far. Everybody's going, this is brilliant, until... Didn't expect that, did he? And the other thing to look out for is missing dogs. Been missing for 3 days. There he is, bless him. And it takes me back, actually. These are the true and false. We'll come on to these at the end, so you can tell me if these are true or false at the end. There was one where Bub, I mentioned earlier on, went to, and he went to this address, and there were this couple having a fight, a bit of an argument and whatever, out in the garden, and we pulled up, and he gets out, and he walks over, and there's a dog running around in the yard, and Mick, Bub, says, does your dog bite? And he says, no, not at all. He says, well, I need to come in and see you. So he walked in through the gate, and first thing the dog did was bite him. And he's shaking the dog off, and he says, I thought you said your dog doesn't bite. He says, it's not my dog.
Does your dog bite? Oh. Oh. Nice dog. I thought you said your dog did not bite.
That is not my dog.
So it suggested that we influenced the Pink Panther on some of his shows. You can just imagine what it was like over the radio for the next 3 days with Mick. Does your dog bite? He became a dog handler, actually, and this is the world's worst police dog, and it was filmed from a helicopter, because all good shows are filmed from helicopters, because they show so much, and this one is, apologies for the quality of the video. You can see the dog. There he is. The dog handler chasing the bad guy. The dog. No, that's the bad guy there. You can just imagine what the dog was called after that particular incident. Now, the good news is not everything got away. He learnt and the dog came back with a piece of the thief. Now, one of the key things about British policing is the support that we get from communities. If without consent, we would never get anywhere, particularly when we've got a major incident running. People getting the cameras out, getting in the way, does no help whatsoever for officers. And this was a true case, or was it? An armed robbery that took place in Doncaster, my hometown. Two guys have been committing robberies all over the place at post offices. And on this particular day, we were ready for them. They hit a post office the day before. We missed them, but this day we were ready. And they did. They hit another post office. And they stole a police car. They dragged the cop out of it, threw him down an embankment, jumped into his car and set off. Then realising that we were chasing him because they could hear the radio in the car, decided to pull a chap up who was out test driving a Ford XR3i. Now, that's an old car, isn't it? Pulled him up, threw him down the banking as well, and disappeared off in the XR3. Anyway, cut a long story short, chased into Doncaster and crashed the car. Crashed the car into a terraced house. The two guys jumped out. One went that way, one went that way. And one of them ran around the back of the terraced houses. And in the back was Mrs. Smith. Now, she was a state secret. She was out there with a shovel, and she was scooping up the poop from a pooch when this bloke ran past, pushed her on the floor. She was in her 80s, so not happy. He ran into the house, couldn't get out, so he came back, only to be met with the full force of a full shovel. Okay? She was absolutely shovel-ready, and he was in a right state, I can tell you. Now, if you can't get that into your mind about what that might have looked like, it was something like this. Something like that. And he was taken into custody, covered in all sorts, with a broken nose and all the rest of it, and we had a hell of a job to explain to the custody sergeant why this armed robber looked like that, and more importantly, smelt like that as well. There he is. Okay. Embarrassing moments. This is the point for the Americans in the audience where I have to say that when if I mention curtains, I mean drapes. Okay? Because people didn't get this, because curtains in the UK are the same as drapes in the US and probably elsewhere. Does everybody know what curtains, drapes are? Yeah, great. Okay, so this car here, brand new, fresh out the dealership. This lady had just taken it for a spin, literally, down the A1 in Doncaster and wrapped it around the central reservation and was absolutely distraught. And eventually, my mate got out of her that her name was Mrs. Curtin. Okay? And he had no empathy, sympathy, or anything else with anybody. He just didn't get it. So his phrase was, with her in total hysteria, pull yourself together, love. To which I said, is it Annette? Annette Curtin, no. He didn't get that either. Yeah, pull yourself together. And the other one was, I saw this car flying across the overpass at Doncaster on the M18, and he was doing like 140 mile an hour by the time I stopped him. And it was a few miles up the road towards Thorn, and not many people drive towards Thorn. But we did. And anyway, I pulled him up and cautioned him. I said, look, I have to prosecute you. 140 mile an hour is just ridiculous. Would you like to give me an explanation? He says, yeah, I'm going to see a bird in Filey. And wanting to empathise with him and make him feel a little bit better, I said, she must be an absolute cracker then. To which he said, no, I'm an ornithologist. And a red-crested reed warbler, that takes some saying, so I'll say it again, a red-crested reed warbler had been spotted in Filey on the coast, and he was on his way to see it. And you only see it before 8 o'clock in the morning, apparently, so he was giving it what for. And then there was the speeding ticket for the RAF. You know the speed guns that everybody loves so much? One of the guys on the shift decided, because we had RAF Finningley near to us, Tornadoes and Vulcan bombers used to take off from there, decided to point one of the things up at one of the Tornadoes as it took off. And for some reason, the thing didn't work again after he'd done this. And he had to explain to the sergeant why it didn't work. So he said, well, I dropped it, Sarge. I don't think you did, because we got a letter back. And it came from the RAF, and it said, thank you for your message, which allows us to complete the file on this incident. You may be interested to know that the tactical computer on the Tornado had automatically locked onto your hostile radar equipment and sent a jamming signal back to it. That's why it didn't work. Furthermore, the Sidewinder air-to-ground missiles aboard the fully armed aircraft had also locked onto the target. Fortunately, the Dutch pilots flying the Tornado responded to the missile status alert intelligently and was able to override the automatic protection system before the missile was launched. Yes. And these stories don't just stop here. What about this one? This is a cannabis fire in the US.
Carelessness and cannabis triggered a house fire in San Diego. When firefighters put out the flames, they discovered an elaborate pot-growing operation there in the garage. Firefighters say some of those marijuana plants did burn. They also say one person was treated for smoke inhalation.
I inhaled so much smoke.
True or false? Yeah. And there are other policing methods from around the world. I mean, people do say, every country says they've got the best police service in the world and all the rest of it, and we say the same in the UK. We're very traditional about this kind of stuff. And there are some different ways of dealing with things. And just before the Olympics, I was tasked with preparing some tactics to say how we would rescue people who were taken prisoner or hostage in an office block. So for a bit of fun, bit of humour, for the senior ranking officers, those two phrases don't normally go in the same sentence, humour and senior ranking officers, we decided to stage this. This is how we were going to do it. We'd secure the doorway, we'd do a very quick check inside, and then we'd make the decision who is in the best position to go into that room and rescue those hostages. And we have a very, very, very simple technique. Tell you now that the commissioner of the metropolis sat and looked and said, really? There you go. And it's no different in South Africa.
It's a quiet Sunday morning, and police are in pursuit
We're chasing
of a stolen
him.
truck. The reckless driver tries everything to evade the following unit, so the officer radios for backup. A response vehicle soon arrives and notifies the felon of their presence.
Just listen to the commentary.
Still not responding to his request to stop, the officer decides to approach the vehicle and negotiate with the driver, face to face. After a few minutes, the officer gets the driver to turn himself in. Advice this would-be felon will remember for the rest of his days.
It's the irony of the commentary. Has anybody got grandkids who are just going to, or kids that are just going to university? Yeah, it's Freshers Week. That's what Freshers Week looks like in Cambridge. We always used to know when there was going to be a problem, because if they ran out of cling film or similar, we knew what the latest ploy was going to be for the freshers. So we had to sort of be prepared for that kind of thing. He wasn't there for very long, not until we got somebody to take a picture of it. Okay. And then there's this one here, being arrested for imitating a police vehicle. And then there's a courtroom. There's always folklore about the courtroom. There's the German translator. There's a guy called John Hammond in Doncaster. True or false? And he always used to sort of jump out from doorways when you were on the beat and scare you. He did have some mental health issues, but he was a very, very well-dressed gentleman. He was ex-parachute regiment and all the rest of it. And he used to come out with things in court all the time. So anyway, we were sat in court one day. We got a German chap who'd been arrested for drink driving, didn't speak a word of English. We needed an interpreter. So the court clerk shouted, "Have we got anybody who speaks German?" And before I could hit him, John said, "Yes, I can, sir." "Oh, great, would you come up to the front?" And I'm sat there going, "You don't want to do this, you don't want to do this." So he went. March, very, very, very committed to what he was going to do. He was very smartly dressed, stood up in the box, he took the oath. He says, "What I would like you to do, Mr. Hammond," he said, "I would like you to speak to the accused, and I would like you just to translate a few things for the benefit of their worships who are sat up at the back. Could you ask him his name?" And John looked at the German chap and he said, "What is your name?" Now, the good news was he got 10 days, which meant that we didn't have to deal with him at all in the court, because he was forever coming into the court and disrupting and doing all the other things. And once I was giving evidence at court, and the defence, it was always a battle between the defence and the police and the prosecution. One day I had said in my pocketbook that I had observed a young girl for 3 minutes, exactly 3 minutes, damaging a window. And come, officer, 3 minutes, exactly 3 minutes, 180 seconds. Yes, exactly 3 minutes. Not a dot after, not a dot before. No, absolutely. Officer will do a test, and we'll do it now. I'm going to tell you to go, and I am going to count 3 minutes, and I want you to tell me when 3 minutes has been reached. I want to test whether your ability to check 3 minutes is absolutely accurate. So, yeah, okay. So off he went. So go. Stood there. And after 3 minutes, I said, "Stop." And he said, "Officer, that was incredible." He says, I do have to give that to you." He says, "How did you do that?" And I said, "There's a clock at the back of the courtroom." And then the other one was another pursuit. We had lots of pursuits. We're chasing this guy up through South Yorkshire, and he 110 miles an hour. There were cars all over like you see on the shows, and suddenly he just stopped and pulled over. And we jumped out, as you do. You slide across the bonnet because you can, and up to the window, and people try and pull him out of different windows from different directions. And we said, "What's the problem?" He said, "Well, I had to stop eventually, I suppose." I said, "Well, why were you being chased anyway?" And he says, "Well, about 10 years ago." He said, "My wife left me for a traffic officer in Nottinghamshire." I said, "Yeah?" He says, "I thought you were bringing her back." And then there's this one. This is the height of arrogance, actually, with a senior officer walking into a police station. The first time he'd been into this police station, not in uniform, getting fed up after 30 seconds of waiting, went up to the glass and knocked on the window, and Barbara, who was stood there dealing with, or trying to deal with, somebody who was in front of the senior officer in the queue. And he knocked on the glass and he said, "Do you know who I am?" And she said, "No, love, but if you can remember where you live, I'll get someone to take you home." Get in there. Brilliant. And as I said earlier on, we do actually use humour to test people's ability to make decisions, and you should always look for the gorilla in the room. That's a phrase that we use quite a lot. What's the information telling you, and what should your decision be?
Divert your course 15 degrees to the north to avoid a collision. Over.
Please divert your course 15 degrees to the south to avoid collision.
This is Captain Hancock. You will divert your course. Over.
Negative, Captain. I'm not moving anything. Change your course. Over.
So, this is the USS Montana, the second largest vessel in the North Atlantic Fleet. You will change course 15 degrees north, or I will be forced to take measures to ensure the safety of this ship. Over.
This is a lighthouse, mate. It's your call. Hello, Captain.
The moral of the story is that it's not a bad thing to change your decision. And we use things like that just to emphasise it. Okay. And the importance of communication. 28 arrested during a day of action in Somerset. We've arrested 28 people and executed 12. Warrants. Anyone lost a huge amount of cannabis in the Chelmsley Wood area? Don't panic, we've found it. Pop in and collect it. These are real tweets that go out there. And then probably my favourite, this one. This is the German Coast Guard. This is all about the importance of communication and making sure people understand what it is that you're saying. So just have a little listen to this. This is him being trained. First day in the job.
Überlebensradar.
There he is, that's his training over.
Mayday, mayday. Hello, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Can you... Over. We are sinking. We are sinking.
Hello? This is the German Coast Guard.
We are sinking. We're sinking.
What are you thinking about?
And genuinely all used to get across a point. And when we've been in jobs, when I was dealing with the Raoul Moat case, which I'll talk about tomorrow, have you seen the lighthouse? Have we seen the gorilla? You only have to say that to somebody who you've trained and they know exactly what they mean. It works. Humour's good. It sticks in your mind. So, true or false? That's what they keep in police boxes, by the way. Speed gun and the RAF, true or false? It is. German interpreter. You got 10 days. Mrs. Smith. I was too convincing. What about Mrs. Curtin? Sorry. Does your dog bat? That's true as well. See, don't tell lies, you see. Tour de France, forget that one because you didn't see it. The fireman. It's false. And finally, I found this tape. This is Gerald a few years on, after he'd done his stuff in Africa and got involved in the academia. And this is him actually in a show. Just move that on. Seen that? That shouldn't have happened. Oh. Tell you what, I'll let that finish. Here we are.
When I first captured Gerald in the Congo, I'm 67, I think it was.
68.
68. There was an awful lot of work to do. He was enormously slow and difficult. I had to do a lot of work with him on a sort of one-to-one basis.
If I might just butt in at this point, Tim, I think I should point out that I have done a considerable amount of work on this project myself, and if I may say so, your teaching methods do leave a bit to be desired.
It's a little bit ungrateful, isn't it?
And your diction, for instance, is
I'm
not
sorry,
really
sorry, can I put this into some sort of perspective? When I caught Gerald in 68, he was completely wild.
Wild? I was absolutely livid.
Ladies and gents, that's it for today. I hope that's been amusing. Thank you. I'll be free outside because Deal or No Deal's on next. People want to chat. And tomorrow I will be doing a talk on the hunt for the killer Raoul Moat. And there's not a lot of laughs in that one, I'm afraid. But any questions, more than happy to field them. Thanks very much. Have a good day.